We have apologies from Councillor Ruzecki and Councillor Wing. Sorry, Peter. Let me try and re-add you. Okay, great. that is slide 2.
with a door. And doors.
Hydraulic lifts are proper lifts. And the other thing was, you say you're having photovoltaic cells on the roof, yeah? I thought, it's my understanding, you need quite a lot of gubbins to go with that. You need batteries, you need all sorts of stuff to keep that going. Now, where does that all go?
There are quite a few nooks and crannies in the building already. We've either got the loft space or to the actual side of the tower. So the actual to the right of the lift, there's quite a lot of cupboard space and what have you. Also used as a sort of plant space there already. So that will probably go in there. Yeah.
Will there be batteries?
Not at the moment, no. That's subject to detailed design by the say electrical engineer. But that could be something that is utilised when they get a bit smaller in the near future.
Right. Okay. Because they do take up an awful lot of space.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I want to ask. Thank you.
David, and then Peter.
I'd just like to congratulate Ivan. From what I've seen of the designs, they're everything that I expected. I think they complement the building nicely, and I just want us to get on with it now.
Me too.
And happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Peter?
Yes.
Now listen, I have a lot of feedback. People who are not speaking, turn their mics to mute, please.
No sound.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mute him.
Peter now, but he's muted.
No, Peter, that's what Peter wanted. That's what his question was. Right, carry on, Richard.
Oh, he's not. Oh, right. Okay, fine. I think the next thing is we should ask Fiona to speak, to give you some idea of the history and what she's found. I think she's even been to the library, the National Library in Scotland, and found a whole load of stuff. I was amazed, really, on the previous history of the especially when it was a townhouse, and it was quite a lot of space that it covered. I was amazed how much land was at the back of it.
Okay.
No, thank you, Richard, and thanks, Ivan, for that's a wonderful presentation to see where the scheme has got to. Well done. Since March, I think it was just about a couple of weeks after the first lockdown, I went to the site when it was a food bank and carried out a condition survey, which was really very interesting and told me quite a lot about the existing building and how it changed over time. And that process sort of told me that actually the building's in pretty good condition despite the fact it's been heavily changed. The ground floor heavily changed, the first floor seems to have a few original features which would need to be proven, and the top floor, second floor quite significantly changed. But actually it wasn't until we found the photograph of the rear of the building that Ivan had in one of his books, the book on Ramsgate, that actually showed what the house was like in the late 19th century. And that demonstrated a lot of the sort of assumptions that we'd made when we were walking around the building about how things might have changed. So a lot has changed on the back, as you know, with the later metal staircase, and that would all come out. The bay window was later. All the other windows except the one window to the right-hand side of the rear elevation, that seems to be the only original window left. So we would have to potentially make a supporting sort of case for the bottom of that window to be dropped to make this connection between using the lift shaft again to come into the back. And that's probably the only bit that I can see on the back that actually we're making an intervention. And around the side you can see where the windows have changed at different eras over time. And the front elevation, it was wonderful to find the drawing from Margate Museum, which is one of two. We don't know where the other one is, and we hope that post-lockdown, when the museum's open again, we might actually have access to try and find the other sort of missing, lost drawing, which probably has a little bit more information. But that drawing that Richard showed was really wonderful, and it demonstrated what of the 1905 scheme, when the building was changed from Admiral Fox's house, was still in place. And as Richard said, we did some what they call cartochronology, which is tracing back the development of the site through mapping. And that's why we went to the National Library of Scotland, has across the country has the best collection of digitalised Ordnance Survey maps, historic maps. So we went to them, and we've just been spending this week making sure we can utilise those and get copyright clearance. But those actually demonstrate that up until 1974, the whole of the land at the rear was in the ownership of the house, and it was rather a beautiful garden with a fountain. And where the library stands now was all part of the same land, and that had clearly been sold off when the ownership of the property was within the Kent County Council, and then the school was subsequently built on the land at the back. So that was quite fascinating. Actually, there was rather a lovely garden there. And then internally, I think it sort of shows us that I think the staircase is a later intervention. It may be recycled material, but we would have to sort of prove that by other sources, such as paint analysis, and we'd need to check a little bit more on the closed chimneys and flues in terms of any latent asbestos. And I think the roof space could do with a bit of a review, although it was looked at by a surveyor quite in the last sort of couple of years before you purchased. So there's a few more things that I'd quite like to do in the building, and the report that I've started needs a little bit more research to sort of make it robust enough for the Architectural History Fund. So I don't think, Ivan, probably you haven't issued it because it needed a little bit of updating, and it was to be done in 3 phases because of COVID. So we're just entering the 2nd phase now. We've had some lovely support this week from the Kent Firefighting Museum, and Ivan's colleague Sarah was in touch with them. They've given us permission to use their photographs, and they've given us the original ones, which we had rather sketchy copies of. So that's rather wonderful to actually see the real quality of their photographs, and they've given us usage of another one from the 1950s, which is great. So we're tracking down a few more bits and pieces to prove how the building changed. The big difference, what we don't really understand, is the real extent of the original material that exists within the property. There's a few clues there about a doorway and some fireplaces, cornices, hidden bits and pieces within cupboards, which is rather intriguing. But I'm sure that's all part and parcel of where Ivan's reached with his proposals to do a very light touch with the intervention, which I think is working out really well now. But I agree, I think the reinstatement of the sliding doors on the front is a great, very strong move, so I'll heartily support that. But it's been fascinating. So I think, you know, we've got one more phase to complete the history, and then subsequently we would carry out an assessment of the proposals and potentially justification, which would go into the Architectural History Fund, and obviously responding to anything that TDC come up with whilst we're going through this, what might prove to be quite a long consultation period because of the COVID restrictions. So hopefully that gives you a potted history of what we've been doing.
Thank you, smashing, thank you. Back to you, Richard.
Okay. Dean, if you'd like to put up, let me see, slide 7, please, because I think this is where we move on to the Architectural Heritage Foundation. That's it. Okay. As you know, I managed to get a sum of £15,000 from the Architectural Heritage Foundation, basically to build the case, both to support the planning application that we're making, and to apply for an AHF transformational project grant of up to £350,000. They tend to do those once or twice, well, probably only once or twice a year. We're going to miss out on this year's one, so it's going to be next year, which will probably be September next year. But I will try to, as far as we can, because we've got a good relationship with them, to see if we can get a bit earlier on, because we want to get on and get this job done. Obviously, the pandemic is making things a bit difficult. Fiona's work, when it's all finished, and the business case and Ivan's work will then be all packaged up and given to the AHF for them to read in the first place, and then I will use it as part of as a documentation to support an application for the transformational project fund, which I'll probably start anyway this autumn, as soon as I've got all the information together. So Fiona's work, part of some of Ivan's work, and also the work that Tim Addison is doing from Counterculture, which is the business case, has already been paid for. All we've got to do is go back to the AHF with the invoices and claim our money from them, just to make you to keep you informed of that one. The really big thing is if we can get the 350,000. If we can do that, it's probably going to be about half, maybe, probably, or at least a third of the cost of the work that's going to be needed to be done to the building in order to turn it into the community centre. It's going to make quite a bit of difference. The reason I've gone with the AHF is because as a parish or town council, we've got very limited options about how we can apply for funding. We can't just go to the Heritage Lottery Scheme for something like this. The AHF is probably our best port of call, which is why I'm suggesting this, why we're going along this track. If at the end of the day the AHF either doesn't give us the money or only gives us some of the money, then we'll obviously have to go back, and then we're talking about borrowing some money, and obviously using the rest of the Radford bequest to make up the difference. Okay,
move on.
Right. I think that pretty well covers it, unless if you can take that off again, Dean, and I'll answer any questions that people have got about the AHF in particular.
Anybody got any questions?
Okay.
All
No.
happy? Oh, sorry,
right,
Pat. Sorry, Pat.
Yeah, sorry, this is a bit off the beaten track. Why can't the council move there?
Move what?
Yes, it could.
Move the council offices and sublet the customs house. There are so many advantages to doing that. There's parking, for example, for councillors who have mobility problems. We'd be saving money, I presume. We've got 2 floors of offices up there. All we need is a big room to have the council chamber in. I'm just throwing that out to, I've always said this, to query why we're neglecting this asset.
I don't think we're neglecting it, Pat. I just think we haven't really discussed that at all. Although there's been some discussion about it, but nothing, nothing really, no heavy discussion about that. Has been floated, I guess. But I'm not sure about the what the current lease is, how that lease is, whether we could sublet or not sublet, or whether we should just move out, whether we should buy Customs House. I don't know, I mean, those are questions for council, I believe. But Richard, have you got anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, because of 1 or 2 little things, as you know, I actually am exploring the whole thing again, and I'll come back to the council with a book, but I'd rather not say anything in public at the moment because I think it's premature, and I'd like to have some advice before I make any recommendations to the council about anything. But certainly that is an option you could produce. However, Radford House was bought as a community centre. As long as the council doesn't take up all the space and there is room to have a community centre, which is really what it was about, a community hub, then I think that's reasonable. The only thing I would say about Custom House, it does look like a town hall, and it is a town in a sense, and it has been our base for a decade or more. but it's really up to the council what it wants to do. It can move in between. I certainly think that if it's a matter of the staff, I mean, Dean's listening, I'm sure, but the deputy has already said to me she'd be quite happy to work over at Radford House, and I'm sure the other members of staff would as well. So, but it's really that. I don't think that's an issue. It's really a matter of really looking at in the light of substantial changes that have happened in the last year or two in terms of commercial property, its valuations, the COVID-19, the way that change, the way that people change, and the way that offices have changed, and the way the use of offices have changed. I think it makes no sense at all to say anything at the moment now. And if you allow me, I definitely will take this on board and do something about it, and come back to you with a report which will be based on solid advice.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think it is previous at the moment, and yeah, we'll leave that there. But thank you for raising it, Pat.
All right.
Anybody else? Anything?
If I may, I've got to run off because I'm in major trouble with the girlfriend.
Oh, we can't have that. Oh, don't look now.
It's his birthday.
Yeah.
And I need to take him out for dinner.
Happy birthday.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. David.
I've just sent a message to Fiona about the fire museum at Manston. I just wanted to make sure she'd got it.
You're muted, Fiona.
Sorry, did you send that by email?
I've just sent it in the meeting text thing.
In the chat? I haven't got that available today.
I'll read it out. Fiona, there used to be a fire museum on the MOD site at Manston. I'm not sure if it's still there, or if it isn't, where it moved to. But
Yeah,
it could well have useful information for you.
Yeah, apparently they're closed, and I don't know whether that's a permanent close. But through Ivan's colleague Sarah, we've been in touch with the chairman of the museum this week, and also one of the volunteers has been really helpful, and he's the person that sent through the original photographs of things that we found that have been put into press clippings over the years that we had a sort of snippet of. So he is digging around to see if he's got anything else. We tried to contact them several months ago, but I think they were completely closed and no volunteers were picking up emails. So yes, they do exist to some degree. They've certainly got an archive, and we're certainly in touch with them. Yes, thank you. It's somewhere Bromley way, I think. Yeah, you're correct. It's the same place.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona. If no one's got anything else to say. Is there anything else you want to finalise, Richard?
No, I think.
Okay, so we're accepting the report.
Very good. Can I just mention the outside? Some improvements. I'm trying to get ahead on the outside of the building. That's slides 8 and 9. Right. Okay. As you know, part of the requirements that were put before me, that we should try and reduce the footprint of the council, which is why we have bought 2 electric vehicles, and we want to try and put charging points outside Radford House. I have put an interest within a KCC scheme for electric vehicle charging points, and I'm looking for a grant for 4 EV charge points and 2 is for the milk floats. We know that if we just for doing the milk floats, it's going to cost about £10,000 because we're going to have to do put in a brand new cabling, and there's going to have to be some excavations in order to put the cabling in and get it over to the other side. The charging points for the two electric vehicles will be at the rear left of the building, where the old fire control point, World War II fire control point. One other thing I'd like to also suggest to the council is that the containers take up quite a lot of room, and the building at the single-storey, somewhat tumble-down building on the right-hand side is actually not really very useful. And I'm suggesting that we take down part of it and turn the two containers 90 degrees and tuck them up by the rear wall, and then put a trellis at the rear end to screen them from sight. I would need the permission of the council to do that. I'll have to check, obviously, with Ivan to check that isn't going to infringe any planning application, that we're being a bit previous. I think then we can it will give us a rather more open site at the back of the depot there, and allow the vehicles to turn easier. Okay.
Right.
So if you can go back to drop that slide now, that's it. Okay. It probably costs 300 or 400 to shift the containers. Obviously, the cost of a fencing, I think just taking down the part of the shed is not going to be. Obviously, that can be done in house. You have to be a bit careful because there's. Actually, they're metal sheets, so that's okay on that roof. But the tree next door is moving in on that the roots of it, pushing it over anyway. So I think all we're doing is just doing the inevitable.
Yeah, Richard. Just a word of warning is that because the building is within the grounds of a Grade 2 listed building, it will need planning consent if you want to knock the wall down.
Right. Okay.
I'm just giving you that.
I'm glad we got a planner in the mix.
Yeah. You may have the enforcement officers knocking on your door.
Okay.
So
I'll ask Ivan to include that in the.
I mean, if we decide that's the way to go, then you could include it as an amendment within the current application.
How do you want to do this? Do you want to me to draw something up and give you a written report, and then put it?
If you could. Yeah, if you could. I just need to see that. Peter and I would need to have a look at that.
Okay.
Have you done, Chum? David?
Yeah, the minute of the previous meeting that I spoke about before contained a number of items that I think were designed to give the committee some idea of the recurrent costs of the building, the running costs of the building. Mm-hmm. We're going to need that when we're budget setting later this year. So yeah. I'm not suggesting we deal with it now, but we do need reports on that, I think.
Yeah, I agree, David.
It's going to be a bit difficult, so we don't know how much it's going to cost. Because, I worked on the sort of running costs of... one, we don't know what the rates are going to be, if any. We also don't know whether it's going to be more expensive than Custom House or less expensive if it's given all the... Remember, Custom House isn't very well insulated at all, and it does use a lot of energy. But I would use Custom House as a kind of guide. It would be a rough and ready figure, unless I've got some kind of heating in.
Well, I'm a rough and ready guy, so a rough and ready thing would be quite ample for the time being.
Surely TDC can tell us what the rates are going to be.
Yeah, well, the rates that the Kent Fire and Rescue were paying were $35,000 a year, because it was a fire station, but we wouldn't want to be paying anywhere near that.
Can I also, I just got maybe a radical idea, I don't know. But in relation to the internal rooms, I'm not saying, or I was just thinking about whether we could get any local sponsorship at all from companies or whatever who want to put their names within the building to say call it so-and-so room or whatever, so they get they get a little bit of advertising or whatever. But and also that would cost them to have their name put in there and to see whether, and that would generate some income. Just a thought. I'm not saying like we want it as a football stadium, where we've sponsored it and call it something because it is Radford House. So just internally, but hey ho, just a thought.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else, Richard?
On Radford House, that's it. I think just all you want to do about Custom House, and if you want just a very quick run through of that and what's happened since that time, because obviously that's also included in the committee's remit.
Yep.
That's item 12, slide 12 would be for that.
Richard,
Hmm?
do you
Yep.
do you want me to leave the meeting now? You finished with what I need to do?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're
Right.
okay.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. Thank you very, very much for attending.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Aye. Right. During lockdown, Custom House was empty. There wasn't used. The deputy did move in there for a period of time. Almost all business was done from home initially, and then slowly but surely the offices have been moved in. The offices are now open, but under constant review. Obviously, because of various possible lockdown regulations and all the rest of it. The outside woodwork has been repainted and refettled and hopefully that should last another 3 to 5 years, depending how bad the weather is. The Thai Passion restaurant has reopened, and we did have some trouble with the fan of it because it was creating quite a lot of noise, and the neighbours complained. We found it was a fault in the fan, and they have the original suppliers have now replaced it. The RNLI has started training, or is about to start training. He's been training its staff, and it will be and it has reopened in the last day or two. And the VIC has also restarted a limited service behind screens. You can't have leaflets. The packs have been made up, but 3 of the volunteers are manning it from about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, I think, to 2 in the 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning to about 2 in the afternoon. So we've got virtually all the services that Custom House used to do have opened. Then we're not in normalcy anymore, but obviously there is something going on there. You can see we're moving towards that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just have a look in a bit. I think then the final thing I've got, well, that's Custom House. I think the only final thing is whether we wanted to talk about hire charges for both Radford House and Custom House for the future. We haven't changed our charges in a decade. Many groups don't pay anything at all, and I'm just wondering if it's still a fair policy. I'm not suggesting that we change the policy tonight. Should we still be charging £10 an hour plus £10 administration fee, which is what we charge at the moment for all our sites, or should we be doing anything? Should we continue to be free at the point of use, or for some groups but not all? And should we instead set a reasonable fee or hard charge and give discounts as appropriate? And I'm finally saying, is a one-size policy fits all appropriate for Radford House?
No.
Should that, Richard? Should that not go to F&G?
Yeah. Okay, if you'd like to end that slide there, please, Dean.
Richard, one thing from me in relation to our staff, obviously from the government has said that if you can work from home, you should work from home. TDC has certainly got probably 85% of their staff have been told to work from home. They can, obviously some can't. You know, should we be saying to our staff that they should be working from home again?
I have spoken to the staff considerably on this matter. It is their choice.
If they're happy for where they are, I'm happy. But I just want to make sure that our staff are safe.
If we felt in any way, or if I felt in any way that we should stop operating from Custom House, I would do so immediately, and we can do that as we've done before. We can just pick up the phones and shift to home. But I think, I mean, you can ask Dean himself. He's there now. I don't see that's any harm in asking him. I think that both Dean and Eileen and Emma and Kim, even Kim's come back, are very happy to work from Custom House, and it's their personal choice. But
I don't want to put Dean under any. I don't want to put Dean under any pressure at all. So I'll leave that with you. If the guys are happy to work there, that's fine. If they're not, then
under pressure, Chair.
Hey.
I mean, obviously once or twice a week.
But
I just get more work done. It's like hell on earth in Radford House working there, with the machines going and God knows what across the way. Plus, you know, the technicians knocking something to bits, either inside the building or outside the building. So I tend to use the day or 2 days or wherever I'm over in Ramsgate to do many of the meetings or go on site visits and various things like that, and do all the hard work here, because it's a darn sight easier to do it quieter. Okay.
Is there anything else, Richard, that you want to say, or are you done now? Hello, he's frozen. That's a nice thing. Richard. Anyway, has anybody else got anything that they want to say or to raise at all? No, all okay? You're all okay with that? So I would just thank Richard and everybody else for their commitment to our task, and thank you all for turning up, and good evening, and go and have a large drop of something or other.